Oh, hi, Nolli. Thanks for joining us today. I was really excited to have a professional rugby player with us, especially for England. Um, Obviously, today we got lots of teachers with us from across our schools in the trust. And then we got the children who have been doing some amazing reporting, doing some research. So they've got some really good questions today. Olivia's going to run the interview. So if I pass over to her.
Hi Nolli, I thank you again for taking time out of your day to join us. I really appreciate you giving me the chance to interview you.
Absolute pleasure. And I'm sure you're going to be 100 times better than the people that are paid a lot of money to do it. So I'm looking forward to it from a proper journalist.
Oh, thank you. I'd like to start things off gently because ever since I knew I was interviewing you, I wondered how you got from Danielle to Nolli. Would you mind letting me know?
Yes, so I've got two big brothers who have had quite a big influence on me as I've been growing up, especially probably in my rugby career. But one of them couldn't say Danielle; he called me Danny Ollie. I called Ollie, so I was Danny Ollie for a little while, and then I had a book that was Ollie Nolly. So I was Danny Ollie, Nolly Elephant, and then they decided because I was quite a chunky little lady when I was younger, the elephant, and then they shortened it to Nolli. But when I moved to New Zealand when I was younger, and my mum took me into primary school and said that this is Danielle, but we know her as Nolli, and they're like, yeah, we love it. We've got no other Nollies. We've never heard of a Nolli. So that's kind of how it stuck. There you go.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't your dad and both your brothers also play rugby?
Yeah, my dad played over 400 games for Bath, which puts him in the top 10 of cap players there, which is quite an achievement because it's quite a big club. And then, yeah, both my brothers still play a little bit now, but were definitely played a lot when we were younger.
Would you say they're slightly jealous in how far you've come compared to them, seeing that they were kind of your influence?
I think not that they'd ever really tell me because they're still like big brothers. They don't want to be too nice to their little sister, but they're definitely super proud of what I've achieved. They've seen how hard I've worked and been there in the difficult times because, you know, being an athlete isn't as glamorous as everyone thinks. You see the glitz and the glamour of being in these tournaments and at the stadiums, but actually the hard work and the different family events that I've missed or friends or bits and pieces. I think probably my middle brother, Joe, isn't necessarily jealous of me, but more disappointed in himself. I think growing up, he was definitely the most talented athlete out of the three of us, but didn't have the kind of the psychological approach that you need to work pretty hard and be pretty gritty. So I think, yeah, it's a bit of a reminder for him for what he didn't do with his sport, but they're super proud. And yeah, I think one of the reasons why I decided to retire on the game that I did was because one of my last images of being on the field was looking up and seeing both my brothers and all my family having a great time with a few beers and enjoying themselves. And that's something that always makes me smile a lot. So yeah, to have them there at that game was pretty cool.
That actually just gave me goosebumps when you said that. That's lovely. As well as them, who else would you say your inspiration in rugby is?
I think probably my dad. You know, he's even to the World Cup final when we finally got a gold medal. He was telling me after the game what he thought I should have improved on or could have done better, and I had to stop him. I think for the first time and said, "I don't care, Dad. I finally got the gold medal." But yeah, I think my dad massively has influenced my playing and also kept me very grounded. But I've been really lucky that my mum as well has always had the message to me that there's no such word as can't, which stuck with me at challenging times when I was told actually at one point in my career I wouldn't be able to play again. So yeah, I think from an emotional point of view and a support, my mum had a big influence as well.
So following the theme of influence, you're now a HSB ambassador, aren't you?
Yeah, HSBC.
HSBC.
The bank, they're the global sponsor for the World Sevens series, and became the first ever female global ambassador this season, which was a huge honour.
How did you get involved with that?
So I did some work with World Rugby at the Sevens World Cup over in San Francisco, and during that time I met all of the big headline sponsors. So it's HSBC, DHL, the delivery company, the yellow one, and Capgemini, who are a technology company, and some others. And actually I just got on with the people that run the programme for HSBC. I love what they do in terms of their grassroots stuff. So the work that they do away from the elite game, that you know, they try and inspire lots of young people to play the game. And I think I was just myself, and they enjoyed my company. They enjoyed what I stood for and my values, which actually I think goes a long way, and probably a message to you all that actually, when it comes to big opportunities, it's you as a person that they're buying into. It's you that they're investing into, and we, as I say, we both aligned with our values. I met with them, and we discussed how it would look, and then jumped straight in. They were quite conscious that they weren't working with a female on a global level, and they had worked with women around the series, but they're really passionate about engaging and inspiring young women, and also supporting the women's series. So they were a big advocate to World Rugby on taking the tournament from six different legs around the world to 8. They've aligned 6 of them now with the men. So as the main sponsor, they're pushing World Rugby to say, look, you've got to do more for the women. So it kind of made sense to have someone to shout about it as well.
What else do you do as your role, with your role, sorry?
So specifically with HSBC, it's really varied, and I love that. I have been to different tournaments around the world. So my first one was Dubai, and then I went to Cape Town. I've been to Vancouver. I was supposed to be going to Hong Kong, but these coronavirus has stopped me going there with them, and London. So yeah, I get to travel the world, which is awesome, and super fun now that I've finished playing, that I don't have to do the hard part of playing, I can do the other side. But with regards to role, it's super important to bring energy to their events, to have somebody with a profile from the game so I might be hosting a question and answer. I actually might be doing the question and answer, spending time with their guests, the people with the money, and looking after their VIPs. Quite often around the world, especially in Vancouver, a lot of people don't know a lot about Rugby Sevens, so talking them through the game and telling them who the star players are and talking about tactics. So that's something that I really enjoy doing, especially from the women's game. They might not know the players. Because they're initiatives with supporting young children into the game, I've done quite a lot of coaching. So an example, I don't know whether you've seen the photos, I was in Dubai and I went to an Emirati school, which is the local children. They've only just started playing rugby, so I went into some coaching with the girls and the boys, and absolutely loved it. So yeah, for them to be able to meet a world champion and an Olympian, you know, and see that I'm pretty normal, and and love just being having fun and being energetic, that's something. And another really crazy thing I did recently that I never thought I'd do was a book reading in Dubai. So HSBC have developed a book. I'll try and get it for you, Liz, because they've reinvented 3 fairy tales because they're so passionate about women and being inclusive. The fairy tales, the princesses don't get saved by the princes; they actually save themselves, and they do all sorts of weird and wonderful things. It's fantastic. But one of their initiatives in Dubai is working with refugee children, and they take them into HSBC building, and they've got volunteers that work for HSBC. and they teach them how to read, and not just read in Emirati, but in Arabic, but they actually learn to read in English. So myself and Brian Habana, who anyone that follows rugby will know, he's a bit of a legend. He's one of the global ambassadors. We read the fairy tale book to them, and we acted it out. And actually, a little inside story for you all, which embarrassed him quite a lot. I said that learning English or learning a language is a lot through song or through dance or making it fun, and that's how you bring the words to life. So I managed to get Brian Habana stood on a chair doing "I'm a Little Teapot," short and stout nursery rhyme, which the kids loved, and then we actually took into the hospitality suite when we'd had a couple of drinks as well. So it's pretty varied what we do, but the most important thing is sharing the passion that we've got for rugby with lots of different people, and the values that have allowed us to be successful within the sport, but at the same time, all of the great things that it's brought to my life. So the confidence, the teamwork, the resilience, those types of things.
When you were reading to the group of refugee children, that must have been, is it quite emotional? How did it make you reflect on your life, seeing it from a different point of view?
It's a fantastic question. I think I was just so excited. So I used to teach, and I was so excited that I just got so into it, and all of the adults in the room, all of the staff couldn't believe how Brian and I just took to it and just ran with it. But it completely inspired me, seeing these young children that were coming from very, very little. A lot of their parents had fled to Dubai before it had changed into the Emirates, so didn't have passports, weren't working. They're third generation with very few aspirations to be successful, but yet they're committing to this program to learn to read. And I think it totally changed my perspective of HSBC, and also the power of sport, and that we look so much into the physical side of sport, but yet sometimes it's really important to reflect on all of the social skills that you develop from sport, and all of the enjoyment that you get from being around a team and other people. And culturally, it opened my eyes to a lot of the challenges that they face, and probably a side to Dubai that no one really talks about. But yet, I was massively inspired, and I love telling people about it, because I think it's something that we maybe all could do a little bit more of, in terms of our helping out.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. Going a bit into your career now, how did it feel when you were only one of 12 players selected for the Women's 7 squad?
So in 2014, we worked unbelievably hard. In 2013, I'd actually left my job. I decided, right, if I'm going to focus, I got 2 silver medals in the World Cup before, and this is in 15-a-side game. So I left my career. It's a bit of a leap of faith, because I had a mortgage to pay and bills and stuff. But we went on. It paid off. We went on to win the World Cup in September 2014, and then on the back of that, we finally became the first 12 to become full-time professional rugby players. And there's 2 sides to it. So I'll talk about the difficult side first. I'd always done my rugby career in my own world. So I'd work full time and I trained full time, and then I joined the team at the weekends, because we were all working, and then we'd kind of travel down to London or wherever the camp was, and we'd train. And I didn't realise how much that gave me a mental relief from rugby. So it allowed me to think about something other than my sport. Whereas going into a full-time program, we were around the girls and the coaches and all of the staff full-time, all day, every day. I actually moved in with another rugby player to try and split the cost of living in a much more expensive county than the one I was living in before, in Surrey. I found it really challenging, because I couldn't escape rugby, and I found it quite overwhelming. I think all of us did. And we thought that it would all be perfect, but yet we actually had to learn how to be professional athletes around each other, how that affected our team, and we learned a lot about each other, and got annoyed with each other every now and again, well, quite a bit, but actually learned about that from a performance perspective. So it was quite an interesting step for me, and all of us. But on the other side of it, I was finally a professional rugby player, and I remember when I had to fill out a form, I think it was even when we were renting the house, and it was like, what's your job? And I said, and I wrote professional rugby player. And I just thought, I never thought I would ever be able to write that. So yeah, it was interesting. And my mum actually said to me, when I finally got my contract through and I signed on the dotted line to say, yes, I would be a professional rugby player. She said that she had dug out some check stubs. So some of you won't even know what checkbooks are, but check stubs that she had paid for me to go to play for England, and that she had hoped at that point that we wouldn't have to pay to play for my country. So she never thought that in my career I would ever be able to be paid and it to be my job. So it was quite a nice kind of full circle of where I'd been and what I'd achieved through the time.
You mentioned that you had to miss out on a lot though to get where you are. Would you say it was worth it?
I always try to look at things as a choice, not a sacrifice. I think everyone kind of says, oh, you sacrifice friends and family time, you sacrifice eating what you want and doing things. But it was a choice for me, and it was an easy choice because I loved it. And I think that I have such a passion for rugby. I love being around my team. I fully enjoy the mental and physical stress, and don't get me wrong, going into a full-time environment, I did struggle with that because I didn't realize how I like to have a balance in my life. But I think, it's not until you finish your career that you realize, you look back and you kind of think, yeah, it was worth it. And it was difficult at times, but I don't think I would change it.
What do you foresee for the future of ladies rugby now that it's getting more exposure and many more girls getting involved?
So in particular, I think with Sevens, HSBC supporting, even having an external facing female ambassador, that's something they'd never had before, and is a massive step forward because it shows, a brand as big as HSBC are elevating the profile of the game because they are associating themselves with it quite heavily. I think, some of the figures with regards to TV coverage that they have, there's over 2.5 million viewers around the world tuning into Sevens tournaments. There's over 120 countries that watch the tournaments. I think all of the different countries that they visit, all of the different the fans, it's just the more that we can align men's and women's rugby together, I think the more we show that men and women can do anything, and actually therefore we're inspiring so many more young girls to play the game because they can see that it's possible, because they can see the role models on the field, they can see the ambassadors doing what I'm doing, and I think, and that's not just for young girls. I think it's really important for young boys to see that as well, so that if they've got a sister, they're encouraging her to play, or if they've got a girl in their team or someone that wants to join in, they're accepting of her and they invite her in. I know that with the boys that I played rugby with, I was probably one of the best players. So they were devastated when I was told by the RFU that I couldn't play anymore because I was their top tackler. So I think that's kind of a big part of it. And the more we can expose the game in the media and on the World Series, and having brands supporting it, the more other brands are going to come in, so they're going to be bringing more money in, which then professionalizes the game even more, which allows players to be paid, which then makes the standard better because it's their job, so they're not trying to balance two jobs. So it's a kind of a circle that I think in the Sevens in particular is definitely taking huge steps forward. That said, there's still lots to be done, but it's something that HSBC are really proud of.
Yeah, it's amazing what they're doing. When I read up about it, it seemed everything they're doing. Because didn't you go to Italy and you're training a team over there too? So
That was
yeah.
something a little bit separate.
Oh,
It
okay.
was in sevens though, and some good research. So I actually coached through my boyfriend the Italian fire service sevens team, the men's team. We went over to the World Police and Fire Games over in China, and yeah, I had 8 days with this group of young men who I'd never met, didn't speak English, I don't speak Italian, and we went on to win the tournament. But I think the influence, so coaching is something that I do and I have done for a long time, but it was the first time I'd ever coached men's seven-side, and I think that having those types of opportunities, and we're starting to see more female coaches, they were blown away that they had me as their coach, and I was like, but am I good enough? You know, I'm coaching these guys, and I think that I was putting a limitation on myself because I was female and I hadn't experienced it before, but yet they had the total opposite idea about it. So I think that taught me definitely, like, what limitations are we putting on ourselves, because the opportunities are there, and I think we need to get them. And as I say, like being the global ambassador with HSBC, I needed to take that opportunity with two hands, because the long-term effect and the effect it's having and the knock-on effect to other young girls is pretty big.
Just out of intrigue, how did you get over the language barrier when you were trying to train them?
So a couple of them spoke a little bit of English, and luckily Italian and English are they're not too dissimilar. So, you know, they're derived from Latin. So there are some words you put, you know, the accents of Italian at the end, and then there we go. They're the same word. My boyfriend is fully fluent in both, so he did help a little bit. But one of the arts of coaching is being succinct, and in teaching, you know, our communication skills are tested on a daily basis. And if someone doesn't understand something, you have to find a different way to communicate it. And whether that's, you know, sometimes that can happen within English. You know, I might be saying something over and over again and you're going, I don't understand. So do I demonstrate? Do I use actions myself? What words am I choosing to actually emphasize things? And actually, I just had to kind of roll with, it didn't look perfect. And when we got it wrong, I stopped it and we changed it a little bit. I'd flown over with a whiteboard so I could draw pictures for them so they could see what I meant. I had videos that I'd saved to emphasize so they could see players. So yeah, I had to be pretty creative with my communication, but I think it was a really good challenge because, as I say, as a coach and as teachers and people working with others, I think quite often we take for granted that we think they understand because we're speaking the same language, but quite often you know, there can be a breakdown in communication even with that.
Yeah, I know, I get what you mean.
Liz is smiling. I think she can appreciate what I'm saying.
Yeah, I can see a lot of the teachers smiling. Yeah. Now, from someone with experience in the Olympics, how do you see the impact for the Olympians now that it's been moved to next year?
Oh, it's massive. I think first and foremost, we go on a 4-year cycle. You know, I went to Rio 4 years ago, and it's a huge commitment to continue playing if that's what you want to do. And there are some players that, one girl is Heather Fisher is a year older than me, so she's 36. She was going to potentially retire last year, but had the dream to go to another Olympics. So to extend another year is quite significant. I think it's the impact of life. If you are looking at that as your end point and then retirement, actually you kind of then got to look at, well, are your friends and family okay to support you for another year, of all the sacrifices or choices that you're making to, you know, it's relatively selfish in a way that you're training full time, you're away traveling a lot, you're having to eat certain things, you have to go to bed at a certain time, everything kind of revolves around your athlete lifestyle. So it's a big commitment for another year. I think in particular for the women's game, there's players that play both codes like I do. So there's a 7-a-side game, which is the Olympics, and then there's a 15-a-side game, which is kind of Six Nations, Autumn International and World Cup. Well, next year is the 15s World Cup. So after Rio in 2016, we all shifted back to 15s, which is a totally different kind of game of rugby, really. And I think it took me about 4 months to get my head around, right, this is how you play again, and this is what you're doing. Those players were going to play in Tokyo, switch back to 15s, and then look to go to the World Cup next year. They don't have that time now to transition. So there's 40, instead of like a 12-month period to learn your trade again as a different sport, they've got 40 days. So I think from that point of view, the women's game is going to be challenged. And then it's the other side of it. I was speaking, I'm very fortunate that I'm an ambassador for Laureus, which is a global charity, and they have some incredible athletes. And someone I'd never thought I would ever speak to, because he was an absolute hero, is Michael Johnson. And I was talking to him at an event, and I said to him, you know, it was in February time, and then they were kind of talking about the risk of it being, you know, with coronavirus or whatever. And I said to him, what would you, if this was you competing into the Olympics, because athletics and running is very different to a team sport. And he said he would know to the hour what he would be doing from that point on for the year and the build up to the Olympic Games. So that's how detailed some of the planning goes in. So imagine if all of a sudden it changes, and how that changes your physical preparation, your mental preparation. So yeah, there's a lot of influence for lots of different people, and I think it's a lot harder than people have probably realised, because it's just kind of like, oh, it's just another year, but a year's a long time.
Yeah. Seeing they're unable to train together as well, do you think that's going to affect their connection when they play next year?
Great question. I think, yeah, I was speaking actually via social media with a player from Canada, and she was saying it's really tough not being with her teammates. And I think if I put myself in their shoes, one of the reasons why I love rugby is that it is a team sport, and so you get to play alongside your mates. You get to have a good laugh and be around a group of people, and all of a sudden they're isolated in their own worlds. I think there's massive limitations on what you can do from a training and playing perspective, because you can only do a certain amount of drills on your own or with a family member or your housemate, or whoever you can drag in. So yeah, I think it will have a knock-on effect. The other thing is that it's unlikely that games are going to be played this side of Christmas. So yeah, they will have had, I think the women will have had, the last tournament they played was at the beginning of February. So you're looking at a 10-month gap, and that's a pretty long time to feel pretty rusty, to not go out onto the field. But I suppose the positive way to look at it is that everyone's in relatively the same situation. So it'll be down to the coaches and the management and the players themselves to inspire themselves to feel that they're in a good place and to kind of accelerate their learning and make sure they're in a good place to perform.
Do you know anything they're doing at home at the moment to try and stay connected, stay active, and keep their game ready for next year?
Yeah, so I know that there's a lot of conversations happening over Zoom, like we're doing, and I'm sure you guys are doing with friends and family. I think that connection, that conversation is really important to have, so you don't feel isolated. They're also doing strength and conditioning sessions on Zoom so that the coaches can see what they're doing, and also they can push each other, give each other a bit of banter, and skill challenges. So I think, with the cycle of training, they also have time off. So they will have a week off where they go off and go home and kind of rejuvenate and rent their minds in like normal time. So because it is intense to always be around the team. So they would have done that and had to train in their own time. So they'll be relatively used to it, but obviously it's now 7 weeks, so it's a long time since it's not a 1 week and they get to go back. But I think they're trying to be creative. There's a lot of physical training and skill training, and I think it's just trying to stay motivated, so encouraging each other. I think they're also setting each other silly challenges, whether it be throwing a rugby ball or baking challenges. Just like everyone, it's just trying to kind of keep their mind active. People are playing online Scrabble, getting competitive. I think as sports people, you're very competitively minded. So anything that allows you to win or lose, I think, is something that they've been looking at doing. But spot the difference. I think the other side is kind of mindfulness and meditation and tuning their mind into being able to relax, because if you're constantly feeling a bit anxious because they're not sure about what's happening, it can be very draining mentally. So that's something else they're doing.
What tips would you have for us as journalists and sports people and teenagers, really just trying to stay at home and stay active?
I think the most important thing is to not compare yourself with other people. I think comparison is the source of unhappiness at times, and often on social media we see people doing stuff and think, oh god, I should be doing that, I feel really lazy, but I think the other side, so actually kind of being kind to yourself, and if you want to have a bit of downtime, have some downtime, and try and cut off people that are having a negative influence on your mindset from a social media perspective. Look at people that inspire you, look at people that understand your values. I think the other thing is, with the academy that I coach for, we've looked at consistency. So what does a normal week look like, and let's try and replicate that somehow. So and actually I've been working with some businesses, and we've got them doing their morning commute to get them up, because actually their morning commute normally gives them fresh air, gives them some space to just breathe away from the family. So we've got laps around their neighbourhood, and it also makes them get dressed, because they don't want to go outside in their pyjamas. So having a type of routine, I think, is really important. I'm a big believer in to-do lists as well. I like being able to tick things off and feeling like you're achieving something. I think is important. And something that I learned the other day is to get rid of your frogs now. The frogs are things that jump from to-do list to to-do list to to-do list, that you never really want to do, and they're the ones that just sit there and they make you feel bad that you haven't done them, but then you don't have the motivation to do them. So I have now introduced Frog Friday. So on a Thursday evening, I'll write out my to-do list. I circle the thing that has been there for too long in green, and then next to it is Frog Friday. And before I do anything else on my list, I squish the frog. So there you go. But yeah, I think from a journalist perspective, I love the fact that you guys are engaged and motivated and getting involved at such a young age. I think the more that you can experience doing interviews, listening to people being interviewed, and also doing the interviews, the better. And my advice would be, I do interviews, and it's really hard to ask questions, and nobody realizes how hard questions are until you're stood in front of someone, or you kind of and to get a good answer. So I think if you hear a good question or you hear a really good answer, write that question down so that you know that you can use that type of thing in the future. And also, I think, don't just look at your own field. So don't just look at sport, look at other types of industries and what do they do. But yeah, I think learning your trade, I've been commentating now for the last, I've been doing a lot of it the last year in the men's game, and I wasn't confident in myself. I wasn't confident in what I was doing, and it was because I didn't have enough knowledge. I didn't have enough knowledge about the men's game. I didn't have enough knowledge about the teams that I was working in, because I was working in men's rugby rather than women's rugby. So yeah, I think the more like knowledge is power, and the more knowledge you have on something, the better, because you will feel more confident to have an opinion. You'll be more confident to be able to bounce back and forth and challenge somebody if they're not quite giving you the answer. Yeah, I think journalism is a fascinating tool, and there's lots of different mediums in it, and probably try out lots of different things. But yeah, the art of asking a question and getting the answer that you want, I think, is something that needs practice.
You've made it really easy for me today, so thank you for that.
Great.
Can I just link back to your rugby career? And what would you say was the biggest highlight of your whole career?
God, that's a big question. I think probably can I give you a couple? Can I cop out?
Yeah, of course.
I think winning the World Cup and scoring in the final was really special, because we'd got two silvers, and yeah, to finally go one better was just proof to myself that we could achieve what I always knew what I thought we could. I think the other highlight, which actually came from a low light, was after I'd been told I'd never play rugby again, wearing the white shirt again. So in 2015, I injured my knee really badly, and I was very fortunate that I'd worked previously. I'd had a couple of other operations on other parts of my body, and I knew a very, very, very good surgeon, and even he wasn't sure whether I'd play again. And it took its toll mentally and physically going through the months of rehab that I did. But yeah, unfortunately my first tournament back, I broke in an invitational tournament, so it wasn't an England tournament. I broke my cheek in 3 places, so I then had to have another operation because my face had collapsed in, and so my modelling days were over. not that I ever had them, but I had to have surgery, and then I was told, right, you're going to have to play after 3 weeks. It's not healed, but you're going to need to if you want to put your hand up for selection for the Olympics. So, yeah, to play in that tournament and to wear a white shirt again, and to read the cards that my family had written me, and the players around me, and it was the first tournament I ever won on the World Series, and we ever did win on the World Series with my squad. So yeah, it was very, very mixed emotions. I went from some of the hardest times to some of the best times within the space of a weekend.
When you were off, seeing that you thought that was the end of your career, what were your thoughts for your future career path over that time?
So because I'd always I'd worked in education, so I'd taught, I'd coached, and I'd run a rugby academy, and I'd worked in sport development, so kind of my experience was always around sport. During the time that I'd been injured before, I'd always pushed myself outside my comfort zone and tried to do as much as I could involved with the game, but not too involved that I didn't make me feel bad. So I did a lot of media work, so I did a lot of punditry, so pitch side, in studios. I hadn't really done much in commentary, but I'd done a little bit. And I suppose I kind of just thought we'll probably go back to that. And I'd always kind of kept my options open, but I'd written my email to retire before I'd come back to play. I decided not to send it because a couple of conversations that I'd had with my family, that I thought, right, I'll just take it day by day, week by week. And yeah, probably a good thing I didn't, because I went to an Olympic Games, went to another World Cup, won a Grand Slam. So, but I kept the email because it was something that motivated me to know that I could stop. Because I basically spoke to my dad, and he said, you don't have to keep going anymore. You're okay. You've achieved a lot in your career. Like, you're done. Like, don't worry. And I was like, no, I'm not. And he was like, oh, okay. Well, there you go. You've answered the question.
you've given us quite a lot of advice that is useful for when we're looking at our careers in the future. But if you could go back and give yourself a piece of advice, what would you say to your young self?
To not be so hard on myself, and that I think I always wanted to be liked. I always wanted to have belief from my teammates, and I never really believed that it was there. I always kind of went out of my way to make sure that I was impressing other people, and actually I didn't need to worry about that, because I couldn't control or influence that. I just had to be myself, and as long as I was being true to myself and true to my values and working as hard as I possibly could, then I was adding everything I needed to the team. I didn't need to keep going over and above and be worried about that. And I think as young people, there's so much comparison to other people and wanting to fit in and wanting to be liked, and actually, yeah, that's human nature in any. Even as adults, I'm sure everyone on the call can relate to it. But actually, if you're hardworking and you live by good values, actually, people support good people. I as I said right at the start, the reason I got involved with HSBC, there's so many other talented, amazing rugby players, female rugby players that they could use, but they decided to work with me because they liked who I was as a person. And I think that we often forget that being a good person is a massive thing to be successful, and also to create enjoyment in what we do.
On the flip side from that, where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years?
Gosh, that's another good question. I think probably living near you guys in the southwest. I'm currently in London, but I do want to venture back. I want to be around my family. I'd like to have a family of my own. I think there's big choices to make as a female athlete in terms of having children. There are plenty of athletes that have had children and gone back to world-class level, but it wasn't something that ever fitted with my life whilst I was competing. So yeah, I'd like to potentially have a family. My boyfriend at the moment, he works in hospitality, so we maybe look at having our own country pub or hotel or something where it kind of, I get to go and hang out and meet lots of people and chat, which is what I like doing, and he gets to work hard. But the other side of it is I'm really passionate about inspiring people to go above wherever they thought they would be. I'm from Minehead. Has anyone been to Minehead? Yeah, there's a few nods. No one would ever think that Minehead would produce an elite female rugby player that's been to Olympics and won a World Cup. And I was lucky to have really positive role models around me growing up with my parents and people from the rugby club. So I think that having influence like that is really important, and you can do that in lots of ways. And at the moment I'm doing it in commentary. I'm working in the media. I've got a podcast, and just showing people that actually you can go and do whatever you want depending on what you're passionate about. So yeah, I don't quite know where I want to be exactly, but that's probably what it will involve.
If you do end up opening a restaurant down here, then let us know, because I'm sure we'll all come along to it.
You can do my chief. Yeah, maybe you could do the write-ups and make it sound great.
Now I'm just going to open up the floor to a couple of our journalists and Nigel Dando. Nigel, do you have a question that you would like to ask?
Hi Olivia, hi Nolli. I just wonder, it's been fascinating listening to what you've been saying so far. Obviously there's no rugby being played now. I just wonder how you see the short-term future of the game once it returns, given what is it such a close contact sport? I mean, can it go back to how it was before, do you think?
I think long term it definitely will. I think that we will overcome this. I believe in the science and the power that we've got in terms of dealing with significant medical adversity. But I think in the short term, it's really important that we remember the values of our sport, and it might not look or feel like it has done in the past, but there's still so much that we can do that allows us to benefit from being part of a rugby club and part of a rugby team. I've worked really hard on making sure that our programme that we run with Wasps Ladies is engaging with the girls and using everything positive about what we already ran, or what we already have run through the year and continued it. So in terms of the camaraderie, in terms of structure and support and the physical well-being and mental well-being, I think what rugby looks like, I mean, they've talked about no tackling, no scrums, basically. It's not rugby union, it's touch rugby. But hey, we might see some forwards living their dream as backs and getting to run around in a bit more space, which I'm sure will benefit. But yeah, I think the teamwork and being part of a community is really important and something that rugby prides itself in. So as long as rugby clubs are making sure they're being innovative and creative, there's no reason why we can't still benefit a lot from the game.
Okay, thanks, Nolli.
Now I've got 4 other journalists who prepared a question to ask you. So I'm going to invite Katie. Do you have a question you'd like to ask?
Yes. My question is, did you play lots of different sports growing up? If so, when did you start concentrating on rugby?
Fantastic question, Katie. I did. I was the type of person that the PE teachers would come to me and say, do you want to do this? And I'd be like, yeah, all right, no worries. I did quite a lot of competitive level sport though. I did swimming, gymnastics and trampolining at club level, so I competed in those. When I moved back from New Zealand, I also played netball and did athletics. And my mum was always quite disappointed that I didn't play hockey because that was her sport. But I used to get too frustrated with a hockey stick that someone could just whiz around me, and I wasn't able to use my physical strength. So they put me in goal and allowed me to intimidate people that way. But I think actually doing all of the other sports definitely allowed me to be the rugby player that I am now. You know, the aerobic capacity and upper body strength from swimming that I gained, the footwork and agility, hand-eye coordination from netball, the body management from gymnastics and trampolining and understanding my movements. I think there was so much crossover in terms of allowing me to be the best athlete that I could be, but rugby was something that I excelled in. And the choice in terms of when did I decide, so when I was 15, I'd been selected for Somerset County Netball, was pushing for Southwest and potentially up into, I was probably too short to ever play for England, but I was looking at that. But at the same time, I'd been selected into the England Senior Academy for rugby. And all of a sudden, the weekends clashed. So I had to decide, did I want to do netball? Did I want to do rugby? And at that point, it was a pretty easy decision. And also I decided, I was looking at where I wanted to go to for sixth form, and I wanted to study A-levels because I wanted to go to university. And so I looked at alternatives because I didn't feel like the school I was at was kind of where I wanted to be. So I looked at Millfield, I looked at Taunton School, and you know, private schools that were offering good sports facilities. But I would only be able to have gone to those because of affording them with a scholarship. And they all came back and said that if I wanted a scholarship, I would get it because I was doing pretty well in sport. But if rugby clashed with their school sport, I would have to choose a school. And that made my decision. So, yeah, it was kind of made for me a little bit in terms of logistics. But also people asking me to concentrate on something else meant that I knew which one I wanted to go down. And rugby was the thing that's always made me smile. So that was the thing that I chose.
Thank you, Katie. That was a really good question. Following from that, when you were 15, 14, how did you learn to juggle all your sports with your education?
Yeah, it was pretty tough. So I actually ended up going to a rugby academy in Bath. The RFU set up the first ever women's rugby academy. And I lived in my own house from the age of 16, about 3 hours away from my parents. So it was a very steep learning curve at a very young age. And to be perfectly honest, I I suppose, reasonably bright, and I would have expected pretty good A-levels. However, I didn't make the balance and didn't judge it very well. I didn't put enough time and effort in because it was the type of thing that I'd always been good at. So I didn't need to do that much work at school because actually I'd always got good grades. And it was a bit of a shock to the system when I finally got my AS grades in my first year. And it was kind of the first time I'd ever failed, really. So yeah, my dad's a maths teacher, so he took me under the wing very quickly and said, right, let's sort this out. But unfortunately, I had changed it around. I had managed to start working hard again, and worked a lot on my time management, making sure that I wasn't prioritising rugby and putting in study blocks and utilising my time at school because I couldn't really train there. I could, but not that much, to use as my study time. So I didn't have to do it at my own time, so then I could go and train and do bits. However, in March of my second year at A-levels, I got capped for England. I became the youngest capped player, and all of a sudden the cycle started again of, I don't need to work, I'm doing really well in rugby, I'm going to do really well in my studies, I'm going to do really well in everything. And my bubble burst when my A-level results came out. And I had a scholarship to go to Birmingham Uni, which is kind of unheard of at the time for a sportswoman, and had to phone them and say, I didn't get the grade, so I can't come. So yeah, it isn't a positive story really, but at the same time I learned a lot, that, you know, not to take anything for granted, and if you want to be successful you have to be driven, and the value of academic studies. I had an option. I went to university in Cardiff and I'd studied, and it worked out well. But what happened was it restricted the opportunities that I had. And I think I'm always, whenever I've run an academy, I'm so strict on the studies, because the better you can do in your academic studies, the more options that you have. And the worse you do, the smaller the options become, and therefore it restricts what you actually want to do with regards to the choices that you can make. So yeah, I kind of learned the hard way, but maybe it's had a positive influence on everything else that I've done.
But do you think if you'd focused more on your education, your studies, you wouldn't have got where you got with your rugby? Or do you think you would have found that balance?
I probably would have been more successful earlier with my rugby, because the following season, although I was this new superstar on the scene, they'd made loads about me being as part of the team, the youngest player. It was in the newspapers. The England coach at the time, Jeff Richards, got on the phone and he said to me, I'm not picking you because you haven't worked hard enough on your basics. And I think that one thing that academic studies teaches you without you realising is that you have to work hard on the things you don't like doing, the boring stuff, the things that underpin success. And I think if I had got that worked out sooner with my academic studies, I would have worked out in my rugby career, and wouldn't have spent a year playing for the A side, and telling the coaches no one was ever going to drop me for not doing my basics. So within the space of a couple of months, I'd not succeeded in my levels and not succeeded in rugby. And actually, quite often you see successful people across both because, as I say, the fundamentals of success are working hard when people aren't watching, and on things that aren't glamorous, and that and also listening to advice. I think it took me till I was 25 and I injured my knee for the first time to listen to the physios. Learned some hard lessons then. But again, it was, I had to learn to listen to the people that actually were qualified in it. And I think as young people, you forget that the teachers don't need to tell you what to do because they've done it themselves. They're doing it because they want you to be successful. So, yeah.
Poppy, do you have a question you'd like to ask?
Yeah. My question for you is, what qualities make a good leader?
Fantastic. Okay. I think first and foremost, honesty, and having integrity about yourself. I think that you've got to be honest with other people about how you feel, but you've also got to be honest with yourself. I'm a big believer in encouraging and supporting a positive environment where everybody can communicate, and that's not just being able to speak, but also listening. I think that's and communication is really important for success, and quite often a lot of things that go wrong is because of poor communication. I think not asking other people to do things that you wouldn't be willing to do yourself. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily having the expertise to be the person to complete it at the best of your ability, but more so, if you're asking people to go outside of their comfort zone, if you're asking people to be vulnerable, if you're asking people to challenge others, then you've got to live by those values as well, and you've got to be willing to do that. I think too often we look at the leader has to be the one that has to be the best at it, but yet I don't think that. I think that leaders have different qualities and they get the best out of other people whilst enjoying what they're doing. So I think that's probably would be the things that I would say are pretty important to be a good leader.
Now, Emma Latchford, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah. Throughout your rugby career, have you ever felt that you're not good enough? And if so, how did you deal with that feeling?
Unfortunately, plenty of times. And I think it's a really interesting one. I had a call the other day with a lot of other coaches, and we were talking about how do you motivate players? And there's a kind of a twofold. So are you motivated by fear of failure, or are you motivated by pursuit of greatness? And as an athlete, I had both. But at the same time, not feeling good enough, I would say, was something that restricted me. In my later part of my career, I think it's easier to do as you get older and you reflect, especially when I had times away from the game, and so I kind of then valued playing again so much more because I'd been told I wouldn't play, so every other moment that I got after that was awesome. But I think in terms of dealing with feeling like I wasn't good enough, I always try to look at the positives and have positive influences around me, and people that I could trust to speak to. So my dad was one of them. He would watch pretty much most of my games. He now pretty much watches most of my commentary and other bits and pieces that I do. And I have him as somebody that I can reflect with about what I've done. And I know that his feedback is an honest reflection, and there isn't any part in there that is wanting to hurt me or criticize me, but he also always makes sure that he always points out the positives. And I think quite often as humans we look at the negatives before we look at the positives. So starting a conversation in the review session about, well, I think I did X, Y, and Z really well, that doesn't happen. We always say, first of all, in review session, I think we could improve this, this, and this. And I think it's flipping it into a positive mindset. That's something that I definitely try and I'm getting better at doing as a coach now, especially working with young people, because the more we restrict ourselves by fear of failure and by not feeling we're good enough, the more we're not going to succeed. So I think having positive influences and also understanding yourself is really important. What has a negative effect on you, what has a positive effect on you, and everybody on this Zoom call will be different.
Thank you.
Yeah, as a group, we strive to promote positive news, so I completely agree with everything you say. We've got the Post, which is our in-house newsletter, and everything in it is all positive news that pupils are doing and that's going on around the community. Just trying to get a positive light on things now.
Yeah, to be honest, I think everything, in the mornings when we come down for breakfast, everybody, I'm looking at adults and young people, we have a choice whether to smile at the person sat opposite us or smile at the person on the phone, give them a high five or be grumpy, and kind of mope about, and I think choice is something that we forget we have, and sometimes it's a bit harder than others. Sometimes we have bad days, but the choice of influence, I think, can have a massively positive one. And I think what you guys are all doing in terms of choosing to be part of this program, to be part of the trust, and to be part of something bigger, to make yourself better, to learn and develop, I think is a credit to you all, which I think is absolutely awesome. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I jumped at the opportunity to come and chat to you, because I don't think many, like, I've worked with lots of young people across the country and across the world, and the ones that are successful and that bring positivity to the world are ones that make the choice to make themselves as you know, to be better people and to learn and to develop themselves. So yeah, which all of you guys are doing, which I think is awesome.
We've got Archie. Would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, my question is, who has been your hardest opponent in rugby?
Fantastic question, Archie. I think, do you mean team or do you mean individual?
Team, probably.
Team? Okay, so I'm going to cop out and do two again, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So I think we've always had an incredible rivalry with New Zealand. We've been number 1 and number 2 in the world, and we've swapped around a little bit. Mainly they've been number 1. And I think every time we play New Zealand, you have to be at the top of your game. And if you don't, they punish your mistakes, whether it be territory or points on the board against you. So I love that rivalry. I think it's brilliant because I think the best players produce their best rugby when they're challenged the most, which I think kind of goes across everything in life. I think when it's too easy, it's boring. And then the other team that I enjoy playing, and the hardest opponents would be the French. There is no love lost between England and France, that's for sure. And they have a wonderful atmosphere in their crowds. They've always regionalised their rugby, so the region bids to host the women's game, and they then sell tickets, and there's been sellout crowds for years, and they're so partisan. They love it. They've got flags and horns and hooters. They hate the English. It's brilliant. And there's just this awesome atmosphere. And I think that, you know, one of my second to last game, which actually was the first ever Six Nations game I ever lost, and we lost by 1 point. I think I would have been the only player who've played for 15 years to never lose a Six Nations game, and it's probably one of my favourite because I stood on the pitch. There was 19,000 people all there for the women's game, which was, you know, over my career had never happened. We'd gone from hundreds of people watching to tens of thousands, and they were going mad the whole time, and I think it's something that's going to stick in my memory for a long time. So yeah, the French, and they hit you hard as well, so you've got to be good at your footwork.
Thanks.
Who would you say was your most difficult individual player you've had to play against? Gosh,
there's been a few, some very talented women. I think within England, I think Emily Scarrett, who's actually currently World Player of the Year for the women. She is a big player. She's over 6 foot tall. She plays in the back. She's quick. She's got great hands. She's got a fantastic kicking game. And just the challenge that she brings when she's playing in any team, challenges, because I played fullback, so I'm kind of like rugby's goalkeeper, and she'd be trying to challenge me, and I'd be the last line of defence, so I'd have to tackle her as well. And she was a pretty big woman to bring down. I think on the global scale, probably Portia Woodman in sevens. If you guys tune in, she's one of the fastest on the circuit. Fantastic footwork because she was an international netballer before she played sevens rugby. And so, yeah, doesn't just have the ability, and she's pretty strong, so she doesn't have the ability to run around you. She can sidestep you or run over you. So you've got to be the best of your game to be able to bring her down and stop her. So yeah, Portia Woodman is definitely a name you guys should look out for.
Thank you. And now that's all the questions that I have for today and the student journalist, but can I just open the floor to any adults that potentially have anything? Miss Dads?
Hi Nolli, thank you ever so much for coming today. I've had the honour of standing on the side of a pitch with your mum and watching her being incredibly proud of you. She really is. And having girls myself who play rugby, I love watching them play most of the time, sometimes through slightly gritted teeth. I know Olivia asked you about what advice you'd give your sort of teenage self. what advice would you give your future mum's self in supporting your little to-be athletes?
Great question. I think the most important thing is, something that my brother said to me. So we used to play full contact in the garden, and every now and again my mum, it was pretty full on, we got videos of it, it's pretty scary stuff, and my mum would say to my brothers, she is your younger sister, maybe go a little bit kind of easy on her. And their answer was, if she wants to play, she needs to be good enough. And that kind of stuck with me. And I think that they didn't see the fact that I was younger than them as a limiting factor. They didn't see the fact that I was their little sister as a limiting factor. They just said, if you want to be good enough, you can get stuck in. And actually, I think we put so many restrictions on ourselves as young people, and as adults, in particular. Obviously, we've got lots of guys on the call, but with women, we put restrictions on ourselves because it might not be normal. It might not be, seen. Women's rugby's for boys, right? There's not that many female journalists in sport at all. But just because other people aren't doing it doesn't mean that you can't yourself. I think the biggest thing is, I've been really lucky, and what I would probably try and inspire in children if I get to have them, and also with everyone, with young people on the call, find something you're passionate about. It might be sport. I've been really lucky that it is sport, because I think sport brings so many values to your life. But it doesn't have to be sport. It could be writing. It could be art. It could be music. It could be something. But if you find something that you're passionate about, it brings an enjoyment and just a determination to be successful in that area, and to, I suppose, to not be afraid to give something a go. I think too many people say they don't like something or they don't want to do it before they've even tried, even down to the food that we eat. So I think getting
Brilliant.
stuck in would be my mantra.
Mr. Phillips.
Hi, Nolli.
Hiya.
Thank you for today. It's been inspirational. I've got a daughter who idolises netball. She loves netball. We watch a lot of it on Sky. What do you think the media need to do to enhance coverage of women's sport, to bring it nearer to what they do for the men?
So I think there's a couple of angles with it. I think it needs to be more consistent. I think we need to know about it, and we need to shout about it. There's a challenge of it being on paid TV, but if it's not on paid TV, then it's not on any TV. So actually, let's be positive about that. I also think that as people within sport, we need to be much better at promoting it, and celebrating stuff in a positive light when it is there. Are we going to games? Are we filling up? Working in sport, empty stadiums don't look good on the TV. So are we making an effort to go to a game, to take the school, to enhance the experience of the athletes, because there's more of a crowd and more of an atmosphere, but also making the TV look good. If the TV look good, then sponsors come on board. So it all supports each other. But I think that we are quite often willing to shoot down the media for not doing their job, the national governing bodies for not supporting their athletes. But actually, we need to kind of turn the pointing to ourselves, and actually, what influence can we have? And it's fantastic to hear that you've got it on TV. Get those numbers up. Get your daughters to get their friends to have it on TV, because the viewing figures play an influence in showing it in the future. And then I think the other side of the media and exposing things is what you guys are doing now, is learning about the industry and not being afraid to bring something new, be innovative, be creative. And I think supporting great stories, telling stories of people's journeys, of who they are, you know, what you're all doing. I'm talking to people that are doing it, but I think that that's such a positive way of growing the women's game, because so many women don't get to tell their story, but yet they're just so inspiring and so interesting, and it's fascinating. It's like, why has this never been told before? So I think the more that you guys can be doing, I think the better. And it takes a generational shift. I don't think we need to be relying on young people and using tools like social media, because it's so far-reaching to engage, but in a positive way. You know, when I shared this opportunity with HSBC, and I said, do you want me to use the avenue of HSBC and we can talk about sevens and the Olympics, they loved it. And they were like, yeah, of course, we'd love to share it on our channels. Well, all of a sudden you're sharing it on my channels, which is 10,000 people, on theirs, which is 10, I don't know, 30, I don't know how many, and all of a sudden there's much bigger network reach. So yeah, I think that there's a lot that can be done, that we can be doing, and we can influence and have a small influence, because actually a small influence is more than no influence. And I think we sometimes forget that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I can remember long time ago, we took a class of children to watch the England women's cricket team, and they spent all day. And after they'd spent all day playing, I was blown away by their skills. They came out and they signed every single cricket bat, shirt, piece of paper that was thrown. It must have taken them an hour. And it actually was on the day that England football team got beaten by Iceland. And it always struck me the contrast of how the cricketers were after it, and then actually the amount of effort that we felt was put in by the football team, and what I felt that the cricket team didn't get any coverage that day. It was all about what the football team had done, and I'd seen firsthand just how wonderful the cricket team were, and that's always stuck with me. And how they treated the children was absolutely unbelievable. And you're exactly the same. So thank you for this morning. It's been great.
My pleasure. And actually, I think you'll find that that's pretty similar across every sport within the kind of women's sphere. And I think I remember, so when I was your age, I'm kind of looking at the younger ones on here, we had an athlete called Dwayne Ladagio come into our school, and he had pictures with us. I can't remember the name of the program, and we did these exercises, and he signed something and had a photo. And in fact, I think I've still got the photo. And that was a moment in my childhood that I will remember. And I think that we forget that, you know, and in particular from the Southwest, we don't have loads of sport, but we have got it. And actually, it might be an hour in a minibus, but are we creating opportunities for young people to go and see sport, see it firsthand, bring those athletes to life by coming to a game? And in particular with the women and young girls, the difference when a young girl gets to see a woman play is totally different, because they can relate to them, and we forget that. So I think that's something that you know, Exeter hosting the Women's Six Nations last year brought a tear to my eye. It was just magnificent to see my sport shown on such a great stage with the biggest crowd. I was like, come on, the Southwest, we know how to do it properly. But I think that all the young people on the call, I think you need to be asking your teachers and your parents and people that can organise things, what are you doing about promoting sport? What are you doing about promoting these role models? As much as what can I do to kind of say, look, I want to go to that. I want to try this. I want to tell the story of that athlete.
Thank you, Nolli. Now that's all the questions that we have for you today, but can I just thank you so much again for taking the time out of your day, and you've been an absolute delight to interview.
Bye everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, take care. Bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye.